Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone doing? You see it. You see what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is going to be in the sign of Aries. There is a part 1 to this Mercury retrograde series already out. It kind of just gives you the overview of her cycle, the dates, the degrees, and when the retrograde actually begins, and then the shadow zone stuff. This will be the deep dive. So we're looking at charts. All right. So you can just sit back and relax because you might not be into charts, but if nothing else, just listen to the information and yeah, remember folks, osmosis is a real thing. Even if you don't get it right now, over time you will, because guess what? Mercury is about learning. Yeah, it is about learning. So it's our curiosity. And it's our mind. It's the way we think or don't think. It's our ability to grasp concepts and ideas and to mull them over and then possibly even look at the different perspective of that same idea or that same bit of information. We'll put it like that. It's not so much based on our intellect or our creative intellect, but it is more about gathering information. So we think of when we go to school, back in the day when we went to school, right? Some of us might still be in school, or some of us might be in continuing education. Mercury loves learning. It's a big learner. It gobbles up information. You know, it's like it's food. So your brain, when it comes across information, news, how many of us, we got the devices and we're like, oh my God, what's going on right now? I got to check this. And even if it's not like, even if you're not watching like the news, you maybe have a favorite vlogger or blogger, or it could be, you know, maybe you get flashes of news on social media, maybe your next door neighbor, maybe your siblings, you know, hey, vote for this person, or hey, guess what I heard about this? Or, you know, I know for like in a household where, yeah, I've got 2 Virgos, right? And Mercury is a ruler of Virgo, but it also rules Gemini. Mercury rules 2 different signs in the zodiac. And it's interesting because Gemini and Virgo square each other. A freaking square. Yeah. So they can be uncomfortable. They can be uncomfortable. All right. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Mercury's the details. Virgo loves details. It looks at the minutia, right? The thing is, Mercury tends to be really fast. So when it's in Gemini, it may not, it may, it, here's the thing. It's more about, here's the information. Now I need to go share it and deliver it. You see, it's not so much about taking the information in. Think Mercury in Gemini as a young Mercury. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean it's the 4th sign. I'm sorry, it's the 3rd. I'm thinking Gemini. It's the 3rd sign of the zodiac, right? Because you first have Aries, then you have Taurus, then you have Gemini. So here's Mercury in Gemini. And it's not until we get to Virgo, sign number 6, Mercury sign 3, Virgo is sign number 6. So it's not until we get to Virgo where Mercury in Virgo is then taking the information and literally putting it to use. It's taking it and making a picture with it, like connecting the dots. It's the ahas. It's the, oh, I can figure out how to, like, how does this make sense? And can I do something with it? Is it practical? Serving. I should be able to use it in some way. It should serve a purpose. But see, the Mercury in Gemini, if we back up, the Mercury in Gemini is more about just, well, look what I came across. You know, like there was this episode, I forget what it was. I think it was a Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation. This has been a while. And they were all going to like some foreign affairs type of event, and they were all required to be there, like all the main members. So it was like Next Generation. It's been a minute since I've seen it. So you got Captain Picard, and you've got like Worf is there, and Data is there, and you've got who else was there? the doctor, what's her anyhow, oh, and what's her face anyway. So you understand what I'm saying? Like the main group were all present and they were dreading it. Nobody wanted to go, right? So they were going, and the joke, there was like a running joke the entire show about the guy who was hosting it. He would talk incessantly about everything, yet talk about nothing. And this is not to be mean to Gemini energy, but it just loves to exchange information. So sometimes we can feel like, "Oh my god, we talked on the phone for 45 minutes. The first 5 minutes was great." We or whatever, right? There was only 5 minutes of that conversation where we really talked about something meaningful and important, where the rest of the time was almost like just a back and forth rapport. We weren't really truly diving deep into anything, or it was even impersonal, even because Gemini can be really logical and detached in a sense. It's an air sign. So it's going to be more just about the exchange itself. The the actual engagement. It's like, okay, think about your postal worker. Sure, you wave to them, you open the door, you take the mail, "Thank you." They're, like, really polite, and they're like, "Oh, have a good day," and you're like, "Oh, you too," and it's just like, "Oh, I really like that postal person," and you don't even know their first name. Do you know what I'm saying? But they deliver your mail every day, and for some locations, you got the same mail person, right? You got the same worker delivering you your news, your bills, your information. Sometimes some important information comes in there, the details, the yeah. So it's your shopkeepers. You see their faces, right? That you're familiar, they're familiar with you. It's kind of like classmates too. But do you talk outside of school? Remember when we were younger, when summer came, it was like we may not, depending upon where you grew up, you didn't have contact with those people until this next school year began, right? So it was almost like this, are we friends with these people? Right. And then it's also social media now. So it's also like, well, they're my friends because we're friends on the internet. So does that, are we really friends? It's like we talk about everything. Yeah, man, they're my whatever. But are we actually engaging in a deep, meaningful way? And so this kind of sounds like I'm saying it's a very superficial energy, and it can be. It doesn't mean it always has to be. I mean, we're just talking about one thing, Mercury and Gemini. And its thing is that it moves really quick and fast, typically, because Mercury has wings. It's a quick mover up in the sky, the planet. It moves really quickly. So it doesn't necessarily have time to develop those deep, meaningful relationships or to talk about deeply meaningful things, or to, it's not science. So it's not just taking information and layering it and compounding it like Aquarius energy, where it takes that information and it layers it and it builds upon what it previously knew. You see, but it can be learning to read, and it is the scribe, it is the writer. So you can have really great Mercury and Gemini energy, and you could be a wonderful writer, and you can write about deep, meaningful things because you are your entire chart. You're not just one freaking astrology sign. You're not just the zodiac sign Gemini or the zodiac sign Aries or Taurus or Capricorn or Cancer or Scorpio. You're all your chart, right? So don't be offended, right? If there's things that you hear that are like, God, there's nothing positive here. It's just to explain, because things move so quickly with Mercury that many times it can seem, very surfacey, right? But the point to all this is to understand how fast it moves. It likes to go really fast. And so Mercury can also be the markets, like the stock market, right? And if you watch the tickers, especially if you've been watching like Bitcoin, like I was just looking at it the other day or this morning, actually, the day I'm recording this, um, Bitcoin's getting near like the big 60 mark, and it's like, whoa. And they're saying 65, 67. It should be approaching in a few days' time. And then that's not even talking about the halving that's going to happen. This is all Mercury. This is all information, but it's quick, it's fast. Like it can flip at any minute, but it's also your local community. And so we think of the housing market too. So it's the data though, right? It's the numbers. right? The numbers. Hey, the next door neighbor's house is going for this amount of value. It's that kind of information. I'm hearing telemetry, right? It's the data, it's the collection of information, it's keeping the statistics, right? So sometimes we connect it to like accounting, right? Sometimes, right? Depending upon, because accounting is money, but it's data, right? But we think of the scribe and somebody who's keeping track of what's going on in their writing. Their writing. So it can be, you know, the vlogger and the blogger, and definitely social media for sure. But talking and communicating can be friends, it can be neighbors, can be coworkers and siblings. There's a lot of people involved with Mercury energy. The shopkeepers when you go out shopping. Now, there is a retrograde coming. And because it's a Mercury retrograde in Aries, and Aries is a cardinal sign, Aries is where we kick things off. It's assertive. It can be very impatient. It can be verbally aggressive and assertive because we're talking Mercury, communication and talking and thinking in Aries. You get it? So what we're going to take a look at is what happens and what else is going on when Mercury starts doing its stuff. Now, Mercury starts doing its stuff in terms of a retrograde, which, by the way, just means it takes a backwards motion, starts moving backwards. Okay, so that's number one. What's a retrograde? It's when a planet starts moving backwards, and technically, no planet actually moves backwards. It just appears to move backwards. And so we just call it a retrograde. All right. And that's all we're going to say about that, because then we end up going somewhere else. And I could talk forever about other things I don't need to be talking about. So the retrograde and its effect, though, is obvious. It's a real thing. The thing is, we will notice and feel like we're in that retrograde zone before the retrograde even begins, because we literally start entering what we call its shadow zone. So if you saw the part 1 video, go watch it. I'll include the link below and it'll explain all of that. It explains it and it shows you on this really cool chart how you can kind of see the overview without a whole lot of details, which is actually genius because I tend to bury in the details. So this chart is going to start us, or this video, we're going to start off with looking as to when does Mercury enter its shadow zone. This is important. Dates and degrees matter. Okay, so there it is. March 18th. Okay. There she blows. It's March 18th. And Mercury enters its shadow zone. It enters the shadow zone. So let's go take a look at that before I start getting all insane. There she is. Can you see her? Yeah, you got it on there. Very good. Excellent. 15 degrees. You see this? I got 2 arrows down here because it's Mercury in Aries. Starts entering the shadow zone at 15 degrees. And so right there, that tells us that we know this Mercury will be back here at 15 degrees. You see? Because this Mercury is going to go forward like it is because the numbers are in black. You see the numbers that are in red for the north node. That means this north node is actually in a retrograde. That's how the retrograde shows up on the chart, by red numbers. So this Mercury is also at 15, right? Big deal. That's why this chart matters. This Mercury is, the shadow zone begins at 15. Now, for a couple of months, the nodes, what are we into? Right at the end of February, going into March, um, we have we've had the nodes sitting at 15. It seems like it's been a month already, dare I say? It feels like it anyway. I'd have to double check that, but there's an ongoing gigantic cardinal great cross in the chart between Vega and the north and the south node and Sirius, Sirius in Cancer energy. Vega's in Capricorn. So the north node in Aries and the south node in Libra, there's been a giant great cross, cardinal great cross, right? And interesting because now Mercury is here. So it's like Mercury's going to be reporting because it's the news, it's Mercury. So we'll talk about it. We'll be hearing about it, right? We're kind of be curious about it because it's Mercury. It could have something to do with the future. The future of what? Well, we think of Aries. Aries is all about, I want to start stuff, but I want to be able to start stuff when I want to start it or stop something even. But Aries is really more about initiating energy because it's Aries, number one, because it's cardinal, number two. And Aries usually wants to move really fast. So if Aries wants to move really fast and a speedy planet enters Aries, it's it's surely to, I'm thinking, truly benefit from having to retrograde through Aries. It's touching on the North Node, which is about our future. That North Node is close to Chiron, which is the wounds of our body, and there's a lot of things about the wounds that are relevant. And when I say body, it's because Aries, Aries ruler, what planet rules Aries? Mars rules Aries. So we think body, but we also think military and people who can carry weapons. And we know there's too much war crap going on, right? And we're really tired of it. And I'm not even in a war zone, right? So um, I absolutely want help for those who are in a war zone, for those who need clean water, who need necessities, who need to be safe. Like I'm all for that. And I'm also, people who are fighting for democracy. I think that, like I said, a fight for democracy anywhere is a fight for democracy everywhere. That's just my opinion. Um, but at the end of the day, Mars, the ruler. And so we think armies and soldiers, we think of weapons, we think of body autonomy, the rights to my own body, right? We think of, um, what about those who, injustices against them for the color of their skin or for their gender or for the way they identify? My God, unfortunately, I could write a damn list, but I'm not going to. You get where I'm going with this, but news and information. And the North Node, a big conjunction between Mercury and that North Node. Remember, the North Node is about the future. It is where we're headed, folks. And so the fact that it's in Aries and that Mercury does a retrograde with it, I love it. I love it because to hold down one person's freedoms is to hold on somebody else's freedoms. Surely, surely, it's just a matter of time. And that's, one of the unfortunate things. So, freedoms of our body and our right to understand how we can interact within a society and be safe, the safety of who we are, our safety. Why do I mention safety? Let me back the chart up for a minute. I mentioned safety because Aries being cardinal, and I highlighted the cardinal energy in this chart with the same color that I'm using in this arrow. And for whatever reason today, there was no specific reason. This color just attracted me today. And so Cancer energy, what's Cancer energy? Home and family, strong feminine energy, nurturing feelings and emotions. Cancer energy is emotional security. Emotional security. What do you see? You see, the frickin' moon is at 14 degrees here, which means on March 18th, and what time is this at? I didn't draw this up on purpose at this time. Again, sometimes my charts I get lucky, I think. My charts, I draw them up and the moon's a fast mover. So to draw it up and have it be there at exactly squaring, I think is pretty damn significant. This is 8:52 a.m. Central Daylight Time. I'm in the time zone I'm in. So adjust for where you live. So we got the moon over there at 1448 squaring. Yeah, squaring. Yeah, in 2 hours it'll move 1 degree, right? So if this is at 9 in the morning, that means by 11 in the morning it's in an exact square with Mercury and the North Node. So there's that. And the moon is emotions and family. Strong feminine energy is the moon. The moon rules the sign of Cancer. Yep. It's in its home, it's in its rulership. Strong feminine energy, culture, ancestry. Again, you think of your grandparents, you think of all your ancestors when you think of Cancer energy. okay? But typically, mom's family, possibly because it's feminine, okay? So you think moon, sticks and the bricks in the home, possibly the housing market, because we're already talking about Mercury here, aren't we? And I already mentioned housing, but Cancer energy literally is the house you live in, your home. We think of our childhood home, right? We think of those foods that we ate in childhood and how now those are our comfort foods, like emotional security, emotional satisfaction. And why else do I say security? Because the opposite of Cancer energy is Capricorn energy. And at the opposite of our emotional security is our financial security, Capricorn. And what do we have here? Yeah, see, we have stuff. We have stuff. Cancer energy at the opposite. We had the moon at 14. Here we have Sirius, which is a lot like moon energy. It's about nurturing, but it's food in particular. Food in particular. It's in Capricorn, which is government, businesses, corporations. Okay, we think of capitalism. And then we also have Vega here. Vega, it's hard to tell, but Vega is there at 15. Sorry for the pixelation. Vega is sitting there at 15 degrees. So Sirius is part of this great grand cross now. It wasn't before. Sirius was at lower degrees, but now it's part of this, and Mercury's here and the moon at this particular time. So this great cross has more players at the table than it had before. More players at the table. So Mercury being a retrograde tells us already some of those common themes. The same common themes we have been discussing with this great grand cross: businesses, corporations, government, Capricorn energy, lawyers, fairness, equality, right? Rulings. Then we Cancer energy in homes and the shortage of housing, definitely a shortage of affordable housing, the prices that have just been unattainable for people, and our bodies. The locations of our bodies are literally our freedoms and our independence. This is all in this great grand cardinal cross. And there it is. Mercury is here at 15. Now, this is just one part of the chart, but I want you to see just a couple of other things, and I'm not going to expand upon them because this is just the beginning of this journey. The sun is at 28 degrees, getting close to 29 degrees of Pisces. Public figures. We think Jupiter can be judges, can be justices, can be Supreme Court, can be immigration, can be people overseas, can be public figures overseas, authority figures, because we're talking the sun. So it gets to a critical degree, right? Can be a lot of different things there. We also have to look at Venus. Venus is here at 8 degrees in Pisces, getting close to Saturn, right? What date was this? This was March 18th. Venus getting close to Saturn. Venus will be conjunct Saturn in a few days from here. And then we got Mars at 2634. Mars at 2634. This is important because at 2634 in Aquarius, a fixed air sign, Mars is being squared. And I have a black line drawn for that. I'll highlight it with this one. Mars is being squared with Algo. You see Algo at 26 degrees. An interesting vertex is conjunct Algo. Fate is part of this. This is a big deal. This will help us to understand the Mercury retrograde when it begins, because Mercury is going to take her journey. If I draw Mercury out on this chart, we're going to go like this and go like this, draw Mercury out. Mercury's here at 15. She's going to travel. Mercury's going to travel through Aries. She's going to get to 27 degrees. She's going to get to 27, which means she's going to go past where we see Hercules at this time. Yeah, we see Hercules sitting over here at 25, 26, 26, because it's 2554. Hercules gets, I'm sorry, Mercury. Oh my God, I'm mixing the words together. Mercury and Hercules. Mercury gets to 27 degrees in Aries and goes backwards, goes back to 15. That's right. She goes back to 15. She stands there. She stands still at 15, and then she goes forward again. So that's what this video is about. We're going to track this journey of Mercury. We're going to track her journey and what else is where at that time. So having having vertex and algo in Taurus, money and banking. Taurus, our values, and the earth. Is the earth of value? Do we value the earth? Sure. Food, absolutely. Food security. We think of the planet. Do we value the planet enough to start making sure we're doing the things we need to be her caretaker like we should? Taurus energy, Sedna at 29, 35. Keep an eye on Sedna. She's going to enter Gemini within Mercury's retrograde. Keep that in mind. I'm just giving you the heads up. We have the vertex point, which is fate, fated moment. People come into our lives, events occur, people leave our lives. It's called fate. It's vertex. It's in Taurus. All right. I want you to look at Jupiter because, again, that's judges, the judicial system, the justices. It's in Taurus. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of concerns over traditional values. And remember, when we think of traditional values, Uranus says, I want you to bust out of your old outdated models, your old outdated value system. It's time to do something unconventional and different and new. To do something unconventional, different, and new. Lots of protesting around the world because food has been bastardized and adulterated in so many bad ways that humans are not consuming food anymore. Humans are consuming chemicals and highly processed food that's being sold and packaged and prettied up as food. And so Uranus is like, I'm going to be angry and I'm going to shake up the status quo. So there's a revolution in terms of values, but also the individuals playing a role in that and waking up. Aries, she is the queen of I'm there to start shit and to have a voice at the table, and I'm angry and I'm mad. So if I back this up, talking about some of these outer things will give us the information we're going to need for when Mercury actually begins her retrograde. Okay, so let's go look at that. Here we are. Are you with me? Are you following along? You got it? Here's the Mercury. Here's the date, April 1st. You think I would have the date underlined. For some reason, I have the time underlined. I don't know if that was a mistake. I'm guessing that was a mistake, but we'll see. April 1st, 2024 is when Mercury retrograde in Aries begins. Okay. So we're going to back this up just a little bit and take a peek at Mercury. There she is. There she is at 27 degrees. Okay. There it is. Retrograde begins at 27. Now, I have the black arrow over here. You see it at 15. Remember when Mercury was at 15? We just talked about it, right? You remember that? Let me do this for you real quick. We'll just draw a blue Mercury. Not that you're slow or anything. It helps me to remember too. So we used blue on that last chart. So we're going to use that little blue Mercury to remember this is where that Mercury retro, the shadow zone began, because then this tells us right off the bat, we already know because we did our homework. We already know that this Mercury over here at 27 in Aries is going backwards, and it's going to go backwards to here to 15. Yep, right where that node is sitting, right? So that is the shadow zone, 15 degrees to 27 degrees. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, what do you notice that's different about this chart? At this time, look at the sun. The sun is in Aries here. The sun is at 1241 in Aries. So let's make this Mercury a little tinier and put her there, because she's not there anymore. She's just our reminder. But now the sun is at 1241, 13 degrees. It means the sun is conjunct the north node. The sun is an authority figure. This can be mom and dad. This can be a boss, somebody at the job, whoever you feel is an authority in your life. Because it's in Aries, I got to think Mars. I'm saying to myself, Where's Mars at? What's Mars up to? 27 degrees. 27 degrees, right? We see we got Mars because Mars rules Aries, but let's pay attention also to the sun. The sun is at 1241, the 27 degrees of Aries. This is telling us that this is Gemini energy. Whoa, that's pretty damn fascinating. Because why? Why would that be fascinating? You guys heard me talk a lot about 27 or a lot about Gemini already today, didn't you? The news. But you heard me talk about the housing market, right? The stock market, your local community, neighbors, siblings, coworkers, the merchants within your local community. It's learning, it's schools, it's I want to learn, I want to keep learning. It's news, like I'm sharing the news, I'm getting the news, I'm on social media, right? But that tells me that because it's that high degree, we're talking on a larger scale. This can be information and news on a global scale with Mercury at 27 degrees. So we kind of even think the third decan, we think of Aquarius energy in a way at this 27 degrees. Okay. So this can be very creative intellect, right? Really creative ideas. We think of the inventors, right? Electricity, battery storage, power, alternative energy. We think of crypto and Bitcoin, and we think of global systems. Now, because we're talking about Mars and Aries, we're going to go take a look at that. But we have to kind of apply Mars to all of this. So taking action with something, right? Could it be something that has to do with a battle? Sure, maybe it has to do with talks and conversations. How it's not just about a pause in a war, but maybe peace, possibly, possibly with people who are in battle or at war, possibly because it's Mercury and it's all about communicating. It's communications. And this is good. If you're going to it's good when we stop using weapons, when we use our pen and when we use our mouth and we talk instead. Use your words, right? What do we try to teach children or adults even, right? Use your words, learn to use your words. So let's take a real quick look back at Mars. Look where Mars is. Mars is already in Pisces. And that is significant. Significant because Mars is about the battle. But when Mars enters Pisces, there can be a stall in the fighting. There can be a delay in the fighting. The soldiers all of a sudden taking a rest, a respite even. Now, if I look back at that other chart that we just looked at, Mars was at 2634 then. Okay. And it was in Aquarius and it was getting a square, remember? So Mars at that time was sitting over here, 26 degrees. So now Mars is here and it's entered Pisces at 7. All right. At that 7 degrees, it's coming upon some trine energy with the Scorpio stuff and with Estrella. You see, we got stuff in the water. We do. But this is just to explain there's something happening and trying can create ease in whatever it is that's happening. And because we're talking about Pisces energy, and there's a lot of energy in Pisces, look what else is here. Venus is in Pisces at 26, 27 degrees. You see this? Yeah, Venus is conjunct Neptune. Now, this to me is fascinating because Venus wants peace. Neptune wants unity. Venus is about desire, so she will desire all Piscean things when she's in Pisces. She too wants a respite. This can be beneficial. This can definitely encourage talks of surrender or waving a flag or saying, we're at the table because we want peace. We understand like this battle thing, it's not working. This can also be, remember, think Jupiter, think the justices and the judicial system, think Supreme Court. Don't forget about that for those of us who are in the States. Venus can be the money as well. The financial systems, that's Venus. Finances and money. Venus conjunct Neptune. What happens to the money? All of a sudden, our desires may dissipate a bit or they may temporarily disappear. Does that mean your money is all of a sudden gone? I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is Neptune is the clouds and the confusion. Venus is my values. All of a sudden, what we value, we might be a little wishy-washy as to what we value. Okay. It might even seem like, hey, can I go on a vacation? Maybe we're talking about that, or I just want to go see a movie or wrap myself up in a book or a nice hot tub. Like some of that energy, remember Pisces, make believe and fantasy. Now, Mars at 7 degrees down there is a factor because we're in Aries energy, because it's a Mercury retrograde in Aries. So paying attention to what's going on with Mars matters, right? Mars is kind of the behind the scenes player in this. You, even in your own world, may feel that you don't have as much energy. You may feel more tired and need more sleep because that's what happens when Mars is in Pisces. Remember, Mars is the soldier, but this can also be the Navy because it's Mars, the military, and the Navy can absolutely be some of the institutions. So there might be some of that going on, right? Talking about equality and having conversations and compromises. Compromises. 7 degrees. Mars is at 7. It wants to compromise. It wants to negotiate. Mars at 7 degrees. So we will see if this turns out, if it works. If it does, wonderful. Mars is at that young degree, so it's in the beginning stages of negotiation. This does not by any means, because it's such a low number, it has to get more mature. But you see, Mars will be touching Saturn soon. So that's going to happen, and that will help. Now, this is telling us what's going on with the Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is here at 27, but before it actually goes to that red number, it stands still this day before it goes red. So these are all the things we'll be hearing about. You follow? Because Mercury is the news. So we back this up a little bit and we take a peek and we go to Sedna really quickly, because I'm asking us just to pay attention, because she's moving direct and she's at 2942. She is going to enter Gemini soon. All right. And it does happen during this retrograde cycle. We'll talk about it when we get there. There's a few other things we have to talk about real quickly here, and I'll create a part 2 for this. On this chart, I have written some dates. I've got 411. 2 degrees. This is when Pluto hits 2 degrees. Here on this day, Pluto is at 1 degrees and 52 minutes. When is this day? This is when the Mercury retrograde begins. It's April 1st, April Fool's Day. Wow. Yeah. We have Sirius at 16 pulling away from Vega. Sirius is pulling away from that great cross that it was in, the great cross that still exists. All right. The difficulties and the stress and the tension. It's going to be okay, though. We're going to get through it, right? We see, I have written down May. I jumped ahead and I said to myself, when is this Pluto going to actually hit 2 degrees? Because that 2 degrees is money and values. It's 2 degrees. Think Taurus, think the earth, think banking, think global systems, for sure. Global systems. Think social causes, humanitarian aid, humanitarian causes, right? 2 degrees, money, values. When Pluto gets to 2 degrees in the sign of Aquarius, the humanitarian, we should be able to track it and to see how it showed up, how it expressed, where was it? We should recognize it. This will be the first time ever in our life that Pluto has been at 2 degrees in Aquarius. So it's a big deal. That date that I have written down, when does Pluto get to 2 degrees? It happens April 11th. It hits 2 degrees. Now, there's going to be a separate video for this. Pluto will go retrograde. And it goes retrograde in Aquarius, because it doesn't move fast, on May 2nd. You got Pluto going retrograde at 2 degrees and 6 minutes in Aquarius on May 2nd. That'll be for a separate video to look at Pluto's retrograde cycle. Okay. Now, I want to show one more thing, or I guess 2 more things on this chart. 2 more things I have marked off here. Look what we got at the 15 degrees. Remember, I was just talking about the great cardinal square. Black Moon Lilith is now part of this freaking cardinal square that we've been in. Now Black Moon Lilith has entered the negotiations, Libra energy. This is the courtroom. This is lawyers, right? This is legal stuff, contracts, legalities, equality, fairness. It's Libra, right? Negotiations. There might be people who are getting plea deals or whatever the hell, right? Because it's Libra energy. Let's negotiate. Let's talk. Let's figure this out. We've got Black Moon Lilith conjunct the South Node. The South Node. Bye-bye to certain people who were lawyers, for sure. You might see people, members in Congress. Bye-bye. You might see a lot of that happening because a lot of those folks are that. Yeah, this could be personal relationships because this is marriages and partnerships. So that 15 degrees, this won't be a surprise for folks. You would have already been feeling the stress and tension in your chart if it was a thing for you in your life. So you might be hearing about it from people that you know or people are in the news. Remember, business partnerships and marriages are part of that. Okay, they're part of it. And to emphasize the Grand Cross, I'll just draw it up real quick here because it's just part of the reality of all of this. The North and the South Node have been sitting at 15 degrees. So they're working on something. It's about the past and it's about the future. The past and those business partnerships, the significant one-on-one relationships that were so important in our life. Remember lawyer energy? And ourself and our rights, our freedoms, the equality and my body, right? A big deal, huge deal. Remember, Aries is the independence and my independent and my freedoms. We've got the North Node there at 15. And so now Black Moon Lilith is also part of it. Holy smokes. Holy smokes, right? Yeah. Hot time in the old town tonight, as they say. All right. So we're going to do a part 2. Before I walk away from this, because I have a time drawn up and there was like significant objects, I also want you to take a look at vertex. I noticed it before, but I didn't draw the lines. Remember, vertex runs with an anti-vertex. So if you got a vertex at 23 exactly in Aries, that means at the exact Saggy, that means at the exact opposite in Gemini, we have a 23 degrees mark. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because it's fate, and fate was part of the chart last time. You kind of can't fight fated energy, and this would be anti-vertex. And Gemini, again, speaks to the stock market and the housing market, right? So there might be some adjustments made. There might be things that the Fed will do to make some adjustments with interest rates. I know everybody is saying there is not going to be any changes in interest rates this year, or at least definitely not until later in the year, if at all any. So we'll see. We'll see, because we think the sun is an authority figure. Saturn is also an authority figure of an institution, and Mars is going to be conjunct Saturn. Remember, Mars takes action. Saturn is someone who can call the shots. Pisces is someone who's in charge of like an institution of society. So is Capricorn energy. But again, this Pluto is going to get to 2 degrees, and that's on the 11th. And so that's 10 days after this chart. 10 days after this chart is drawn up. So I am going to end it here. Remember, we'll stay tuned for the part 2, because this is that deep dive, but I don't want to be going over an hour. That's a little insane. And we'll show you more charts. Remember, I appreciate your time, and take care. Bye-bye.